The cost of job injuries and illnesses is enormous, estimated at $174 billion to $348 billion a year, an undercount of the real impact on society, families, and communities.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
The AFL-CIO every year puts out a death on the job report. And it analyzes the numbers from 2 years back of people dying on the job, how people are dying on the job, who is dying on the job, where are they dying on the job. It really is. I mean, it's like a 300-page report. It's amazing. I mean, who knows how much work goes into this stuff. So really recommend checking it out. They put it out every year in conjunction with Workers' Memorial Day, which is on April 28th, which is a day set aside to remember folks who died on the job or from workplace hazards, and to fight for people to not have to go through these things again. In their report, they had some highlights or lowlights from 2023. In 2023, 385 workers died every day from hazardous working conditions. 5,283 workers were killed on the job, and an estimated 135,304 workers died from occupational diseases. The overall job fatality rate did decrease to 3.5 per 100,000 workers. But workers of color die on the job at a higher rate. Black and Latino worker job fatality rates are disproportionate compared with all other workers, and they continue to remain high. Employers reported nearly 3.2 million work-related injuries and illnesses, a decrease from the previous year. At least 55 workers died from heat on the job, a 28% increase from 2022. Fatal and non-fatal data are an undercount of the real problem. Workplace homicides continue to be a significant problem, even though they decreased 12% since 2022. Workplace suicides increased by 5% from 2022. Separately, unintentional overdoses at work decreased by nearly 5% from 2022 to 2023 due to increased attention paid to and efforts to combat the opioid crisis. The rate of serious workplace violence injuries has increased to 4.3 per 10,000 workers. Musculoskeletal disorders from repetitive motion injuries continue to be a major problem, accounting for approximately 28% of all serious work-related injuries and illnesses in private industry. Underreporting of all workplace injuries and illness is widespread. The true toll of work-related injuries and illnesses is 5.2 million to 7.8 million each year in private industry. Chemical exposures continue to plague working people, leading to debilitating, life-threatening diseases that are totally preventable. And the cost of job injuries and illnesses is enormous, estimated at $174 billion to $348 billion a year, an undercount of the real impact on society, families, and communities. They also highlight resources in 2023, which is part of fiscal year 2024. So OSHA resources in fiscal year 2024 are still too few to be a deterrent. There are a total of 1,800 inspectors, 768 federal and 1,034 state, to inspect the 11.8 million workplaces under the Occupational Safety and Health Act's jurisdiction, covering 161 million workers, a workforce that keeps growing while OSHA staff numbers do not. Federal OSHA has 85 fewer inspectors than fiscal year 2023, only enough to now inspect workplaces once every 185 years. And state OSHA plans have 12 additional inspectors compared to fiscal year 2023. There is one inspector for every 85,000 workers. And the current OSHA budget amounts to $4 available to protect each worker. Penalties in fiscal year 2024 are still too weak. The median penalty for killing a worker was $16,000 for federal OSHA. The median penalty for killing a worker was $7,000 for state OSHA plans. And only 137 worker death cases have been criminally prosecuted under the Occupational Safety and Health Act since 1970. The AFL-CIO sent me a couple of Southern top-line numbers. The report finds that agriculture, forestry, and fishing and hunting industries had the highest fatality rate in 2023. the Bureau of Labor Statistics found that Southwest Alabama was ranked number 5 on a list of non-metropolitan areas with the highest concentration of these jobs. The top 4 were all on the West Coast. And all 8 states that had a fatality rate that was higher than the national average, but a reported injury and illness rate below or equal to the national average, were all located in the South. Those 8 are Arkansas, Louisiana, Tennessee, South Carolina, Oklahoma, Texas, North Carolina, and Alabama. So Alabama and all these other states have a higher than average fatality rate at work, but a lower than average reported injury rate.
Hey, 5 seconds, just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
And so one interpretation of that data is that maybe for some reason, when an accident happens on the job in these states, it's more likely to be dangerous, which it's more likely to be fatal, which could be the case, potentially. I think the explanation of that data that makes more sense to me is that these states all have more lax attitudes towards business, and so businesses are just able to get away with not reporting accidents when they don't kill somebody, unlike in other states. That's, I think, what makes the most sense to me, right? Because it's difficult to get away with something like if you actually kill a man, right? If you kill a man, it's kind of difficult to sweep that under the rug. But if somebody, hurts their back or even cuts their finger off or something like that, it's a little bit easier to hide that, especially if you don't have enough people like as, the decreased state capacity in the South would indicate. So that's kind of my explanation of the data. Of course, I'm not a data scientist, so, take that for what it is. But really harrowing numbers and really, it's not necessary. Like, that many people do not have to die. We can have safer workplaces, but it's going to take people organizing, building unions, building strong unions that are able to fight back against their employers' willingness to cut corners for profits, and it's going to take legislation and increased state capacity, not decreased state capacity. We need an increased state capacity to be able to bring these employers to heel. That's what we actually need to do. We need to rein in the owner class because they have too much power. They are too easily able to skirt regulations. They are too easily able to endanger the lives of working people. And we have to put a stop to that.
And Jacob, I'll just add a couple of things to that. And hopefully we'll have an op-ed out in the next couple of days. But in terms of Alabama specifically, as you pointed out, Alabama is one of the more dangerous places and has some of the weaker protections. And Alabama still refuses to extend basic OSHA protections to more than 300,000 state and local government workers. That means the folks who fix our roads, care for our children, and keep our public services running can be sent into unsafe conditions without legal recourse. And, when I was doing research for this op-ed, I found case after case after case after case here in the state of Alabama. Toxic chemicals, extreme heat, dangerous equipment, fatal falls, punishing hours. There was the Phoenix City sawmill, which was called by the Washington Post the most dangerous workplace in America. And a 2023 fatal accident investigation revealed for the second time in 3 years that the employer could have prevented a tragedy by following required safety rules. A man who gave 20 years to the company suffered a gruesome death. And, to expand a little bit broader, we know that children face real danger in the workplace. There's a reason we fought as a labor movement to win child labor laws. And we've seen those child labor laws being weakened across the country in recent years, especially coming out of the pandemic. Employers were griping that no one wanted to work anymore. They couldn't find workers. And so, hey, what about all those kids? What about all those children? They're not in the workforce yet. We could fix that. And the state of Alabama, there is one guy tasked with enforcing child labor laws. Right now, of course, there's the federal folks. And as you've established already, there's not enough of them. Right. So the state government in Alabama employs one gentleman to police child labor in the entire state. And that's despite the fact that we know there have been illegal child labor cases here in the state of Alabama. And what I think about is how many stories, like you mentioned with this, the discrepancy between the fatality rate and the reported injury and accident rate, how many stories of workplace injury and illness will we never know? Right? How many never make it into these reports, never make it into the data? How many stories will we never know about? Because behind every statistic is a community that's forever changed. Children growing up without a parent, spouses who are burdened with grief and medical debt, families hollowed out by preventable loss. The human cost of unsafe work ripples far beyond the job site. And there is a proven solution. We talk about it every week. It's called unions. Unionized workers are significantly more likely to have safer workplaces, right? Because we have the power to speak up with less fear of retaliation, the strength to negotiate for better conditions, the strength to win, better safety protections, ongoing training, etc., etc. So a strong labor movement means safer jobs for all workers, union and non-union alike, by raising standards across industries and communities. It's no accident that the lower the union density in a state, typically the worse the safety is, right? We know for a fact that right-to-work states are more dangerous as a worker than non-right-to-work states. So there's a lot to be said there, and I guess the federal context right now, you know, you've got legislation that could be passed, but nothing's moving on it. There's a bill out there that would protect all workers, regardless of who they work for, where they live. It's not going anywhere in years. It gets put up, you know, nearly every year. We've got OSHA and other safety agencies that already were lacking the resources and authority to do their job. Now, the White House is aggressively slashing funding and enforcement, which puts workers in even greater danger of reckless employers. We've got to defend institutions like NIOSH, the National Institution for Occupational Safety and Health, the Mine Safety and Health Administration. Right? There are attempts right now to gut their budgets and erase their missions. And these agencies, however inadequate they've been, to think that we as working people will be better off without them is wild. And I just want to say that really workers shouldn't have to risk their lives to put food on the table. And we have to reject that. We have to reject the idea that dangerous jobs are just part of life, right? Especially here in the South. Our workers here in the South, here in Alabama, our workers deserve the same dignity, the same protections, the same enforcement as workers anywhere else.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.